So I think a big question is, why am I surprised? Like, that's something that I've been trying to dig into my own mind and heart and figure out the reason why. I believe that in my nervous system, I fully expected that Kamala Harris was going to defeat Trump in this election. I had some conversations with some folks like Sailor Sorry, um, who weren't as confident as me. And I found myself in those conversations checking my nervous system, like, wait, am I confident? And I'd be like, yes, because I would think about all of the data and the information that I've consumed. And I really believed that signs were pointing to a different outcome. Um, I think the clearest analog was the election between Trump and Hillary Clinton in 2016. And I remember being far more shocked and stunned then because, like, I never thought in a million years that after dude said on tape to grab him by the, like, I never in a million years thought that somebody who was on tape saying that, didn't deny saying it, would be elected president. Like, there was just something so vile and depraved about that opinion and him sharing it in that way and it being publicized. Like, I didn't think there was any coming back from that. And I remember a lot of people in the country didn't think there was any coming back from that. So it was especially hard gut punch when people still chose him, including a lot of white women. Like, that boggled my mind. And even thinking about that after the fact, my thought that is that it was more of a referendum on what people thought about Hillary Clinton than anything. When I was trying to unpack that surprise later, my mind went to, oh, people really distrust Hillary Clinton to that degree that they chose him. I still to this day don't know if that's exactly the case, but that's where my mind landed. Another reason I was surprised is because I thought that this would be similar in energy to I thought it would be similar in energy to Obama's election. I thought it would be that same sort of fervor for people to want to make history. I was watching some of the exit interviews being conducted by CNN around polling places in the country, and you were seeing people saying that. Like, there was this one guy that CNN spoke to who brought his daughters with him to the polling place because he felt like the vote was going to be making history and he wanted his daughters to see the process. And I thought that even though she wasn't making a big deal out of it, pardon me, even though she wasn't making a big deal out of it, and by she I mean Kamala Harris, um, I thought that people would still want to make history in the same way. I thought it would be that same sort of groundswell as I felt about Obama. Now, she lost, but if you actually look at the numbers, um, she did draw more people to the polls than Obama did. I believe. I actually need to look that up to make 100% sure. It's as high, uh, if not higher, for sure. Um, but not as high as when Biden just ran against Trump because there were historic numbers in that election. But that's sort of where we're left to scratch our heads and wonder what the difference was because 81 million people voted for Joe Biden and 66 million people, at least by today's count, have voted for Kamala Harris. So there's going to be, by the time all the counting is over, 10 to 15 million people who voted for Biden who did not vote for Harris. And that's what we're going to have to tease out. That's what we're going to have to tease out. We're greeted with the realities of this election. there is a cognitive dissonance that was noticed when it comes to abortion rights. On states like Florida, I believe, was it Arizona as well, but definitely Florida and a few other states, there were measures on the ballot to guarantee abortion rights. And there was a lot of assumption that people who came to the polls to vote to keep abortion rights in those states would be voting for Kamala Harris. And in quite a few states, we saw that that wasn't the case. That there were people who voted to keep abortion rights, but also voted for Trump. And I am stunned by that. I think a lot of political pundits are stunned by that. A lot of the people who I listen to and get my information from on these matters are stunned by that. I found it shocking that those two things would not be in alignment. And that's part of what I'm still trying to understand. Again, the subject of the voting habits of white women is in play. Again, that's a huge talking point, because as far as I've seen, those numbers haven't changed a lot. And I believed that more women, again, would be wanting to make history in having a female president, while I also believed that the precariousness of women's health care and how we just saw Roe v. Wade overturned, and how very likely the Supreme Court is going to change once again and get even more conservative. I thought that that would be enough of a reason for massive amounts of women to come out and vote for Harris as a way to help maintain the rights that are already there. Another stunning data point for me was how Trump overperformed with Latinos. There were some states where Trump has gotten the most Latino male votes of a Republican candidate ever in this election. And there was all that talk about the rally that Trump held in MSG and the comedian that had the Puerto Rican jokes, and everybody was up in arms about that. And a lot of people thought that just completely blew up in his face and was going to change the course of Latino support for him. And obviously that was not the case either. But I really think it comes down to that 10 to 15 million people who just didn't vote. I really think that's what it comes down to. These numbers here. In 2020, Trump had 74 million, 2024, 71 million. There's still votes coming in that very likely will meet this total. In 2020, Biden had 81 million votes, and Kamala Harris has 66 million votes. That 15 million vote gap, like, I can't. It's so crazy to me to imagine that many people were disengaged, felt like it was time to sit it out, and so I find myself trying to come up with reasons why. I do find myself trying to come up with reasons why 15 million people who voted for Biden would not vote for Harris. Because I also feel like in 2020, it was like more effort to vote. Like we were peak pandemic. We were having to fill out ballots and mail things. You know, you had to vote with social distancing. Lines were crazy. I do feel like to some degree we were more politically engaged that year. Maybe it was just being at home. It was also George Floyd's murder, Black Lives Matter protests. Maybe we were just all more civically engaged that year, but I wouldn't have expected a fall off so large. Now, one thing I think that we really have to discuss in this, and it's one thing that I haven't seen a bunch of people bring up, but if we're looking at the difference in that number there, I do think we have to attribute some of it to what's going on in Palestine. I do think we have to attribute some of that to what's going on in Palestine. I saw enough sentiment online that a lot of people who consider themselves politically left were not going to vote for Kamala Harris because of the Biden administration's role in the genocide. I saw enough of that to know that it was going to be significant. I do think we have to include that because, I mean, the Democratic Party, as much as it likes to pretend to be a humanist party, pretend to be populist, you can't be populist and have your thumb on the scales of a population being wiped out in Palestine. You can't do both of those things. And if that's the reason why somebody didn't want to vote for Harris, I do have to say I can't argue against that. Because whether or not it's actually been the case in our adult lives, there is supposed to be some alignment. There's supposed to be some alignment in your values with the person you're voting for. That's what this is supposed to be. We've done the cognitive dissonant thing for so long, where we just look at how policies benefit us and don't think about foreign policy and our chosen political party's role in it. I do think, looking at this number, that might be changing. That might be a part of this. That is something that the Democratic Party is going to have to reckon with. Like, you can only say that Israel has a right to defend itself for so long in the face of the overwhelming numbers of people who have been killed by weapons that we have sent there. Like, in the small amount of research I've done on this, like, there is some weirdness about how after World War II, the United States was politically and economically positioned to be like this police force for, you know, the Western world and Western values, and how part of Israel being set up is to like help maintain that. And that is why the support is unwavering, even in the face of these numbers. But we're getting to a point now where adults who are here and have access to information, like, it's not going to fly. It's just not going to fly. Like, most even slightly civically minded people here look at that and they're like, what the fuck? Like, how many injured, dead children can you see and still feel like when you go vote for your candidate that is in support of that to some degree, that you're doing the right thing? And so in that sense alone, I do understand, even though, again, I find this result beyond disappointing. And the other real conversation that we have to have, is that we have to talk about how people in this country feel about women. I'm not the most qualified person to have that conversation, but we do have to talk about that. Because I'm gonna tell you one thing I'm very afraid of. After Hillary Clinton and after Kamala Harris, there might not be another like seriously nominated female candidate for at least the next 2 election cycles. The easiest takeaway for both of these giant corporate political machines is going to be we can't run a woman. That's going to be the easiest takeaway. And you know they like the easy takeaways because they don't want to introspect. They don't want to actually try to make their actions and words make sense. They don't want to actually be for what the fuck people want. They want to maintain the status quo as much as possible. The easiest takeaway is going to be, oh, well, we just can't run women. We just can't, like, because if you look at these numbers, if you reflect on this, it's the fucked up part for me too is it reminds me of something like my dad said like around 2016. He just offhandedly said something about how there were so many people in the country who would never vote for a woman. And it's like one of them things when I think back on it, it's just like, oh, it's just the wisdom of somebody who's been here longer than me that just didn't make any sense to me. Like we were coming off of Obama, which was a thing that we thought would never fucking happen. We never, like in my lifetime, I never thought we would have a black president. And in seeing that reality change, I thought, well, surely there's enough people in this country who would vote for a woman, but it's proven not true. Harris underperformed Biden in almost every way in this election. Almost every way. Almost every state. Trump is winning his first popular vote. He's never won the popular vote. And I wonder, like, you know, we do all of this polling. The Seltzer poll in Iowa was such a big deal. I think a lot of that polling was based on protecting of abortion rights, which a lot of people do want. A lot of people want that. A lot of real human beings in this country. I mean, and you know, a lot of women, of course, in polling said they want this. But I think that there's a distrust, a devaluing of women that no one's going to tell a pollster. I feel like for the pollsters, they're going to say the right thing and then they're going to get in the ballot box in the booth. They're going to get in the booth and they're going to fill out their ballot. And whatever negative feelings they have towards women, like that's what they're going to vote with. And of course, that's not everybody. I mean, obviously, she got 66 million votes. But the difference between that and what Biden did, like, it just leaves so many questions. And I just, I don't know, being a person in society, you can see negative feelings towards women in so many ways. Like, I'm in rap music for a living. Like, I see it firsthand all the time. I hear it in lyrics all the time. I hear it when people talk about female rappers all the time. Like, you get this visceral understanding that, like, a lot of people feel like women are lesser. And I'm not trying to sit here and say that's some kind of fucking revelation. Like, people talk about misogyny, like smart people talk about misogyny in the world all the time. But like, I'm starting to be scared that it's even worse than they say. Because if I look at 10 to 15 million people who didn't vote, and I look at who Harris is as a candidate, if it's not Palestine, then I feel like it's her gender. Combination of both. I don't know. But like in all of our putting our heads together, we're going to have to figure this shit out. We're going to have a real fucking conversation about how we feel about women. Like I'm getting this sense that there's just millions of people who would never vote for a woman, but won't say it. And that's a fucking huge problem. It's not even just a problem in choosing our elected officials. It's a problem with laws. It's a problem with fucking workplaces. It's just like, that's such a huge fucking problem. Like a cultural fucking issue. And you know, I don't know how we have this conversation, but it's got to be fucking had. And then of course it brings up the question, like, why did Latinos vote for Trump when he talks about mass deporting Mexican immigrants, when he has rallies where they call Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage? Like, why would they choose that? Why would people in those groups choose that? Like, what is it about the Trump brand where that's what they want to be aligned with in the face of direct attacks on the groups that they are in? And it's the same with women. Women that voted for him. Like, I remember the marches that happened when he first got elected. Those were powerful events, powerful visuals. They were incredible to see that sort of backlash, because it was fucked up that he said what he said and still made it in there. That was fucked up. Like, that's fucked up. But the reality is, however many percent of white women chose it again. Chose it in the face of dangers to their reproductive rights. I really find myself struggling to find answers to those questions. So I don't know. And a lot of this leads into conversations that we need to have about what needs to change going forward. There's a bunch of shit that needs to change going forward, because I don't want to be fucking surprised anymore. I think that's one of the number one things for me. It can't be one of the number one things, because number one things means there's only one thing. But I'll say one of the important things for me. I'm fucking tired of being surprised. I'm fucking sick of being surprised. I don't want to think I live in one world and then encounter this political reality that completely fucking shatters it. I never want to experience this again. Like, and I think for me personally, it's going to be a lot to do with the information that I consume. I feel like I try to listen to smart people who have more expertise on these matters than me, so I can try to, have some practical position based on information. But that shit is clearly not working. It is clearly not working. I have to change where I get my information from. But I also feel like left wing media, left wing press. I was watching some shit happen during this election cycle, and it was pissing me off. But I was like, I don't know. I wasn't speaking out about it. Left leaning press does this thing where they love taking people's interviews and speeches out of context, making some out of context thing that a person said into like a headline and pissing everybody off with it. They love that shit. It's that clickbait shit. Like, and I understand how clickbait media is ruining journalism. And where it might be keeping them in business is fucking us up. When you take a Trump speech and just take this little clip of it and throw it around all of our faces, we get angry. But if you miss the context of what he's saying, you don't really understand the conversation he's trying to have and how that conversation might be connecting with the people he's talking to. And maybe we might be interested in understanding how he's connecting to his people beyond a clip that's 4 seconds of him saying something fucking crazy. Like, it got to the point in this election where I started like making sure I saw a longer version of the clip. And just about every time it was rage bait for us by outlets who should fucking know better. That's how these outlets keep us ignorant. By trying to encapsulate things out of context. Left-wing media is fucking broken. At least the media I consume. Because I see people recommending stuff in the chat here that I'll check out for sure. I need some information that's triangulated. I need some information with people on the ground. I need some information from people who actually understand what's happening on the other side and not trying to spoon feed me a narrative to keep me upset and keep me not thinking about what's going on over there. I need better information. I'm fucking sick of being surprised. And yeah, anybody in the Discord, please do drop your news sites, your links, stuff in there that people can check out if you feel like you're getting good information. I'd love to see that, and I need it. I felt like I fuck with Breaking Points. I fuck with Kyle Kalinske. You know, there's different channels I fuck with. But like after this result, like I'm looking back at all of them to try to see like help. Like I want to see them try to make sense of this shit. Yeah, I used to fuck with the Majority Report. I don't know, man. Like the YouTube shit is so, like, again, it's rage baity. It's like making a thumbnail that's like fucking catnip for a liberal minded person like myself. And not much substance, not much true understanding of what the fuck is going on. And let's just say it. Let's just put this out there. Let's just really say it so we know, like, because we all know, we all feel it, but we got to say it. The fucking Democratic Party is washed. They're done. They're fucking toast. They're toast. Fucking done. Part of the reason, this is part of the reason Trump does good. This is part of the reason Trump does good. And I don't like the motherfucker at all. I don't like nothing about him. Nothing. Not a thing. Part of why his shit works and part of why the Republican Party can't move on from him is because that motherfucker has a genuine connection with a real population of people in this country. That motherfucker has people. Kamala Harris doesn't have people. Joe Biden didn't have people. Obama, like, had some people, but, like, he sort of tricked a lot of us into being his people because we thought that he was going to be populist and he wasn't. The Democratic Party does not have any connections nationally to any group of people. They have policies. They have a corporate structure, a corporate political structure that they can put different faces on, and they play the likability game with us. They don't have people. The Democratic Party is washed because there are no people that feel connected to the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is the party of the lesser of two evils, and it's been that way my whole life. And it's done. It's fucking done. They have to have a populist candidate who is genuinely for working people. They need a real humanist candidate. And I don't know how you get a humanist candidate with their structure, with the amount of corporate buy-in that's necessary to have somebody in that position. Bernie was the closest we had. He was the closest we had. And people felt that in him. Bernie had people. But they didn't want Bernie. They were smart. They would have rocked with Bernie. Because the thing with Trump has the people, but Trump is always going to make it about him. He's always going to make it about him. Like at the end of, if we make it to the end of his term, I am very curious to see what that party does. Like, I guess they'll just try to put it on Vance, but I'm going to tell y'all this. Vance ain't got people. Vance got Peter Thiel. Vance got some billionaires. Vance ain't got people. And if we had a rocked with Bernie, Bernie would have brought people because we were connecting with him. And then Bernie would have figured, I believe Bernie would have figured out a way to make it not about him. I think Bernie would have figured out a way to make it about the values, about the rising up and the solidifying of benefits and positive mobility and well-being of working class people. And they would have figured out a way to transfer it to the next person. He wasn't perfect, but none of them are. But the Democratic Party is fucked because they stopped giving a shit about people. They stopped giving a shit about what people actually want. And we're past the point where you can just put a likability face on a bunch of amorphous, vague policies and values and expect to bring people. That shit is over. That shit is over. You can't present vague, kind of lightweight humanist, kind of lightweight populist values and also supported genocide. That shit don't align with no leftist values. Killing all them people in Palestine don't align with no leftist values at all. You can't be the political party that is saying you're for the people and also arming an institutional genocide. You can't do both of those things. That shit used to work. When people were less civically minded, less engaged, had less information, that shit used to work. Because there's nothing Americans love more than like working, getting paid, and keeping our head in the sand and not really giving a shit about what goes on with our tax money in other countries. That's like our favorite shit to do. That's our favorite shit to do. Is to be told the reason why it's happening and not fucking think about it. But we got more information than that now. So until, I don't know what happens with the Democratic Party next. I don't know what happens. I don't know what happens next, but pack it up. Motherfuckers are washed. Those are my thoughts. That's all I got to say about this shit. That's all I got to say about this bullshit. That's all the thoughts I've compiled this morning and trying to understand what the fuck happened. Cause I can't be in this position too many more times. I said earlier, myself, like a bunch of other people in this chat and around the world, like this year's already been fucked. I just don't have the fucking psychological, spiritual, emotional resources to deal with what feels like is coming. Like and subscribe, homie, friend. It's free. Stop playing.